Like much of the world, the Caribbean Community countries, at both governmental and private levels, are contemplating what relations to expect from a new Donald Trump administration. Judging from the opinion pieces, editorials, and various web discussions emanating from the region, it's evident that the overwhelming hope was for Kamala Harris to emerge as the 47th President of the United States. This hope was based on many things, including her identity as a woman of color with a Jamaican father. But the hope for Harris was also based on a fear of Mr. Trump's policies, interpreted from his last administration, as well as things he said on the campaign trail. His heated remarks regarding illegal immigrants also troubled Caribbean migrants in the US and their families at home, particularly his declared determination to deport undocumented migrants. However, it should also be recognized that among the Caribbean immigrant community in the US and populations in the Caribbean, there was admiration for Mr. Trump and support for his leadership style. He is revered as a strong leader, and many believe that conditions for the US black population had improved during his last administration. Regardless of where Caribbean governments, the private sector, or societies stood on the election, Donald Trump has now been elected with a significant majority of the popular vote, and he won much more than the necessary votes required for the country's electoral college to declare him the undisputed winner. What we all have to consider is that the decision about the presidency of the US rests solely with the electorate of the country, and the electorate has spoken loudly and clearly. It is to the US electorate and the US Constitution that Mr. Trump is responsible. His task is made easier by the fact that his Republican Party now has a majority in the Senate, Republican appointees dominate the US Supreme Court, and as this commentary is being delivered, the Republicans are close to securing the majority in the House of Representatives. All this puts Mr. Trump in a very strong position to carry out his policies and execute his programs in the domestic, regional, and international spheres. Three main areas will concern Caribbean relations with the US under Mr. Trump's presidency. These are trade and aid, climate change, and global peace and stability. Mr. Trump has made it clear that he is dissatisfied with the US balance of trade deficit with several countries, especially China and the European Union. In this matter, the Caribbean region and CARICOM countries particularly are in a good place. The US has enjoyed a perennial balance of trade surplus with CARICOM countries collectively. In 2023, the US trade surplus with CARICOM was $7.4 billion. When this figure is compared with the aid that the US gives to CARICOM countries, it shows that the money value of the US trade surplus far exceeds US aid. Let me explain. US total global aid in 2023, that is its aid to the world, was $61 billion, half of which went to 10 countries, principally Ukraine and Israel. All of the 14 independent CARICOM countries received $456.2 million, or 0.75% of the US total global aid of $61 billion. So the aid to CARICOM is tiny. Now, of the CARICOM total sum, $393.8 million went to Haiti alone, leaving $62.4 million, or 0.10% of US total aid for the remaining 13 Caribbean countries. In other words, the US trade surplus with CARICOM countries was $7 billion more than the aid given by the US. In a sense, by the profits our purchasers gave to the US, we are paying for our own aid hundreds of times over. And that is the usual pattern. It is in this connection that CARICOM might consider ways to leverage this situation to improve aid and investment from the US and to bargain with the US government. Mr. Trump has also declared his intention to lower the US corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. This has two implications for the Caribbean. First, some Caribbean countries may have to reduce their own corporate tax rates to remain competitive. That would result in an immediate decline in government revenue, but it will also keep the region as a competitive player for attracting corporate business. The second impact, if the US pursues a unilateral tax strategy, is that it will be breaking ranks with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, which has been dictating tax rates to the rest of the world. The potential unraveling of the OECD's imposed tax rules could restore the competitive capacity of the Caribbean in the financial services sector. This is also worth exploring with the new Trump administration. On climate change, Mr. Trump's policies will pose severe difficulties for Caribbean countries, which are among the worst affected by extreme weather conditions, including global warming and sea level rise. During his presidential campaign, Mr. Trump downplayed climate change and again expressed his intention to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement and to expand oil and gas production, removing regulations that impede fossil fuel extraction. That would be a severe problem for Caribbean countries, whose very existence depends on curbing global warming and sea level rise, which is caused by the CO2 emissions of oil and gas producers. Therefore, as soon as possible, urgent discussions need to start with the new Trump administration on this matter. With regard to global peace and stability, most Caribbean countries have been deeply concerned about the conflict between Israel and Palestinian groups. They firmly believe that achieving a two-state solution in which the two peoples can live within secure borders is essential. Working with Mr. Trump's declared strong commitment to Israel will require much diplomacy. But the US and the Caribbean live in close proximity to each other. And therefore, like all close relationships, they both have to preserve their relations in each other's interests, not only for the present, but also for the future.